How we doing? Patrick E Walsh is with us, and we're going to talk through his latest Substack between the 15 to 24-year category. So we're being specific, or you're being specific, Patrick. Tell us, why did you do this? Why did you take this approach for this Substack?
Well, in this age group, Aisling, deaths are very low. Like you might have maybe 100, 150 deaths. Most of them would be suicides, car accidents, stuff like that. And what I've done for this age group is I've removed what the CSO would call external deaths, which is suicides and car accidents, and basically focus on medical deaths and to see has there been any major changes over the last couple of years. Because that's really, this age group, I know young people do die, but medical deaths in this age group should be relatively stable and there shouldn't be really any big changes in it.
The problem is there's a lot of old people dying, but people don't pay as much heed as they would say to younger people dying. So you've come up with a startling figure there, 83% on 2020.
Okay, I'll just explain and we'll give the actual amounts so people don't think we're hiding them. They are further down the article. But in 2023, there was 86 medical deaths in this age group. And in 2020, there was 47. That's an increase of 83%. Now, that's a massive increase. And it looks, 83%, it's big off a small amount. But still, it's so many, it's what, 39 people, you know?
Yeah.
And people at that age group shouldn't be dying of medical deaths. They do, usually between 50 and 60. We were down to 47. It was coming down for a few years from 2017. So it seems to me something strange is going on. And it's not just a blip. We looked at this last year and the figure was 77%. And in 2021, it was 49%. So there's a big change since 2020. Something seems to have happened in 2021 that medical deaths in this age group are up considerably. And yeah, I'm just pointing it out because these, you might be only talking about maybe 40 people in this year, 40 young people, but it's nearly double the amount that should be dying. But the thing is, in the older age groups, something is killing these people that wasn't happening before. But in older age groups, these sort of numbers would disappear. They'd be lost in the overall deaths. And what I'm trying to say here is, again, I can't prove it medically, but I'm pointing out that people of this age group are dying in greater numbers than before, nearly twice as much. And if this applies to every age group, but we can't spot it, then we've got a problem.
Yeah, because it was hidden. It is hidden in amongst the suicides and the accidents.
Exactly.
So you've separated them now, and now we're really getting to see. So just explain to us, what is a medical death? What's the definition for it?
Well, there's no definition. I'm going to explain where it comes from. There's codes for each sort of death, from cancers, respiratory problems, the whole lot, a load of codes. And a death is analysed by that in the CSO, but this applies worldwide. The same codes are used everywhere, so this is not a CSO thing. And there's a couple of codes. I think they're V and Y. I think I have it at the end of the article. And any external death, which would be a car accident or suicides or people dying by accidents, anything like that where it's not a medical problem, are put in here. So they're separated. So what I've done is I've taken any death that was categorized in here and I've removed it from the total. So what is left is medical deaths.
Okay.
That's where I get everything else. If you went through them all, you would see these people died of cancers, respiratory problems, all sorts of medical problems. That's what they have died of. So that's where it comes from.
Right. And so when you put this up, I know there's always going to be some kind of pushback, really, isn't there? Because people will say, well, our population is growing and that's why we're seeing more deaths. We hear that all the time. It's got to do with our bigger population. What do you say to that?
Well, let's just deal with this age group first and apply that question to this age group. Now, we're talking about 15 to 24-year-olds. Now, this population group, I don't know whether it's growing or not, because population is a very fluid concept at the moment. It's definitely not growing with Irish-born people, because the Irish birth rate has been falling for quite a few years. They might tell you that this age group in the last few years is getting higher since mass immigration has started over the last 5 or 6 years. So what happens is the figures get diluted. Someone will come along there and tell you that in this age group we have a higher population by whatever, and they will work out a rate. Now, they can do that if they want, and you can count all the Ukrainians and all the Africans that have come in that age group, which will dilute the figures. But that's just wrong. And you've also got to factor in that the amount of Irish immigration from that age group, people that are leaving. So that would be making a mistake. That would be falling into a trap. And even at that, what we're talking about here is nearly doubling, nearly 100% increase in this medical deaths in this age group. There is no way the population of this age group has gone up by 100%. So whatever people, you cannot just simply say the population has gone up. It just doesn't work in this age group.
Plus, we do have RIP.ie, so we are monitoring who's dying, and it's mainly the Irish. Now, there are, sometimes you do see names and you say, okay, well, they're not Irish, but it is, I would say, 99% Irish dying on RIP.ie.
Yeah, I'd agree with you there, but I have to say, in the last 9 to 12 months, we are seeing a lot more, a lot of East Europeans who would have came maybe in the last 15, 20 years, and a few, I know I'm saying colour people, they were born in Irish, but I mean, you can only go by what you see in front of you. So, but it is happening a little bit more in the last 9 to 12 months. That's definitely. But you have to remember, we're talking about 2023 here, and you have to be. We're definitely seeing a lot more younger people dying, and not by the condolences, but by, would say, there might be in the notice saying they were in hospice, or they died in hospital, or they died at home peacefully with their families. In other words, they were sick and they knew they were going to die, and that's what's happening. We're seeing a lot more of it. And what I'm looking at these figures is I'm trying to reconcile what we're definitely seeing in RIP.ie, and I know these figures are 2 years old, and to see, is it reflected in these figures? And I think it is, going by the 15 to 24-year-olds anyway.
So let's just look from 2016. So what have we got here? We've got the medical conditions, then we've external causes. So that's suicides and accidents. So what have you done here? So, okay, medical conditions in 2016. So that was 58. All right.
Yeah.
2017 only, well, not only, these are all lives. That's a terrible thing to say, isn't it? 66. 2018, 64. 2019, 54. And then 2020, I think 2020 is a very interesting year because everybody was told to stay away from the hospitals. Well, and as we know, those who were unlucky enough to end up in hospitals or stuck on a ventilator didn't make it. But the young people generally stayed away from the hospitals. And what do we see? This massive drop.
That's true, actually. I noticed that myself. And Dr. Jerry Walters often goes on about the dangers of being in a hospital, with doctors making mistakes. And I think in America, it's one of the highest causes of death is there's a word for the medical word for it, dying due to doctor errors. And is it possible that it's reflected in 2020 and that, like you said, young people kept away from the hospitals, and the figure is lower because of that? Now, you could say that in that case, that might be possible. 2020 might be a bit of an aberration, but still, it's only 7 lower than 2019. So even if you wanted to compare to 2019, you're still talking big increases. And the big increases have happened from 2021 onwards. But that's a good point about the hospitals. And it dawned on me as well. And it might be something that you could take it up with Jerry Walters, because I know he has brought that up before in talking.
Well, Professor Denis Rancourt is the one who's really saying, it was like, because he was comparing northern Italy, I think it was Milan and Rome he was comparing.
Right.
And then he was saying that the people that went into the hospitals didn't fare as well as the ones who stayed away. So he's been looking at the statistics and the data, and that's what he's found. So it seems to be ringing through there as well. So on to 2020. So yeah, it's this sharp increase from 47 deaths right up to 70 deaths in 21. Like, that is a huge increase, isn't it?
Well, it's massive. That's nearly 50%.
Mm.
And as we've said already, if first of all, these figures won't be discussed. Years ago they might have been discussed, but if they come up, they will talk about total deaths in this age group, and they will look at 2020 the figure was 157, and in 2021 it was 186, and I think that percentage comes out at maybe 30% increase, which is bad enough in itself. But the way it would be dismissed is it would say, well, most young people die because of suicide or car accidents or whatever, and the whole thing is dismissed, and it's very easily done. And I can understand people having only a certain limited amount of time, and if that's a headline in the newspaper, they would just go, oh yeah, sure, look, unfortunately more people committed suicide in that year, and maybe it was to do with the lockdowns, and just one of the we had to go through it to, as the inverted commas, save granny. It's one of the things we had to do.
Well, I mean, suicide is a big subject that we really need to talk about. And I think they've been very clever over the years because they don't allow journalists to say that it was suicide, because they say there'll be a copycat effect. So suicide's not discussed. And that's been, if they've paved the way for this a long, long time ago. So there's a lot of hush hush around suicides. And then they've been blending in all of a sudden and unexpected deaths with suicides. And then there's the whole question of whether or not these injections, which are connected to neurological problems, actually bring on suicidal ideation. I mean, that is a possibility, and that's something that we really need to explore, but we won't do it today. We'll go back here to this CSO graph that we've got. Medical deaths age 15 to 24. What's going on here? You can read the graphs better than me.
Well, basically, you can see in 2016, it rises slightly in 2017. But from 2017 onwards, it's on a gradual decrease. And, they say medical, this is not me saying it, but medical advances means we're curing illnesses the whole time and people should be less likely to die. And that seems to be what's happening from 2017 onwards. And we're down in 2020 and things seem to be improving the whole way. And then suddenly something happens in 2021 and there's a steep rise, a very steep rise, which continued on into 2023. And we will be here this time next year. And I can nearly guarantee you it will be at the same rate again. But
and something, from 2020, we know that the teens weren't affected by this thing they were calling COVID that replaced the flu. And they were told that. Even Official Ireland was saying, no, it doesn't really affect them. And then eventually they came for the teens and the young people. And they said, you better do it because you're going to be mixing. And if you want to go on holidays and if you want to go to Electric Picnic, this is what you have to do. So they were put under this enormous pressure to get injected, even though, again, they weren't the initial target group, let's say, but they eventually it really did come for them. And they succumbed very easily. They thought they were doing the right thing. But this is a warning signal, really, more than anything, isn't it? It's like the canary in the coal mine, as you would have put it.
Exactly. And what happened with the COVID vaccine, that age group wasn't really targeted until I think it was June or July 2021. And like you said, I think at that stage they had given up trying to convince people that young people were at risk, serious risk. But they used emotional blackmail. And they also used that they wouldn't let you travel. So these were two heavy guns taken out to convince young people to queue up and get it, and to convince parents to bring their young teenagers to get it. So, you're talking about parents bringing 13 or 14-year-olds and in 2021 to get this jab because their granny lived at home or whatever. And the emotional impact of all this action must be shocking down the line. If you've done this and as a parent you're looking at this graph here now and you're saying to yourself, oh my God, what have I done? Now the chances are your child is okay. Not everybody's going to drop dead, but I mean this is the extreme of it. It's the other people, there's a lot of ill health out there as well. This is the extreme adverse reaction you're looking at here in this age group, nearly a doubling of medical deaths. But we all know, and I know it in my extended family, that there's ill health there in this age group, serious ill health. And I see it in friends and neighbours and work colleagues. And these are the things that are not being spoken about, because there's no, we can track it on this. It's 2 years later, but it's there because it's a death. And you have to remember as well that if a death goes to an inquest, it can't be registered until the inquest is over. And there's a backlog in a lot of inquests. So we are comparing like and like here. So just like make that clear. But we'll say in Roy Butler's case, and I keep bringing him up because it was such a shocking example of what happened. Roy Butler died in, I think it was August 2021. Okay, well, the period just after the rollout. Now, he got the Janssen vaccine, which wasn't an mRNA vaccine, but that's neither here
neither here nor there, really. They were all toxic, you know.
The fact is, he took it because he wanted to travel. He was a very good soccer player, and he was involved with a representative team, and he wanted to travel. And that's the only reason he took it. His inquest didn't complete until October 2024. So his death is not appearing in them figures, even though he died in 2021. So there is situations like that. There was the delay in his, I don't know exactly why it was, but there's a lot of other cases like that too that I haven't got there.
But there's even funny business going on in the coroners, the way they're covering these inquiries into these deaths, because they don't even mention the injections. It's like it never happened. There's this weird omerta going on. And you'll even see it amongst families, friends. Everybody just zips it. And I'm wondering, has somebody got them? Why aren't they saying it? Why won't they say if the person was injected or not? Why can't they just be open about it? Why can't we put this all up on the table and have an open and honest discussion? I mean, this was all very open back in 2021, 2022. It was all over the news. Everybody was talking about it. People who declined the trial were chucked out of society, essentially. But now nobody wants to talk about it. And it's just not good enough. You know, it's not good enough when you're considering we are looking at the excess deaths, not just in this age category, but in general. Clearly, the injections, or at least coinciding with the injections, we're seeing these excess deaths. And nobody wants to talk about it except you, me, and a few others, a handful of others. And that is really, really a very strange position to be in.
Actually, I agree with you. And just on coroners, I don't think anybody's got to them. See, these people are a law unto themselves. They're not answerable for any decision. They send in a report every year of the cases they have closed. And that's all they do. They're not accountable for any decision. The decisions can't be appealed. Now, yeah. I did myself and Louise Rosengrave did an analysis of all the coroners' reports, and we wrote to them. And I just give you, first of all, only 4 of them replied. But I got one serious reply from the Kilkenny coroner. We basically asked them, are you aware of these figures, the massive increase? We were talking about 30% increase in sudden, their cases to have to deal with. And had they informed the government? Basic questions. But the Kilkenny coroner came back and he said, first of all, a lot of his cases were being referred from the hospitals, but that's fine if that's where it's coming from. And the second point he made to us was, a lot of these people, it turned out, had died of heart problems that the deceased themselves were not aware they had.
Oh yeah,
that's the
this
phrase.
This is the old chestnut that they're bringing up now, an underlying condition, and it's very flimsy.
I like the way he phrased it, because he could have left out the fact that these people weren't aware of that they had. So that was as open as anyone's going to get. A lot of the others just fobbed us off with go somewhere else, and most of them didn't reply. But you come back to your point about the coroners, and you're aware of these 2 cases. There was a case, first we got Roy Butler again. Roy Butler died within 5 days of taking the vaccine. He was sick, I think, within 15 minutes of getting the vaccine. He was texting his friends and family. He knew what had happened. There's a text record of the poor lad, going on to die over 5 days. And the Cork coroner came out and said, despite that, he could not make a connection to the vaccine. There's no temporal, despite there being a temporal connection, he could not say the vaccine was involved. Couldn't link it. Now, there was the day before in the Irish Times, there was a report of a man called Michael Laffin, and Aisling Gannon was the coroner. And this came out the day before the Roy Butler one. This man, I think it's in January 2022. I think in his 70s, was a sea swimmer all his life. I think he swam in the sea every day. And he was sent with his family. We're up in January 2022, a cold day. He went out for a swim. His family were there with him. He got into difficulty. I think his son saw what happened. They went out. Someone helped to bring him in, and they revived him on the beach. But he died either on the way to hospital or whatever. And I actually wrote away and I got the coroners, all the reports on it, just to see what was in it. And at that time, he had to, even though he was dead, he had to be swabbed to see had he COVID. And he was swabbed after his death. And he, of course, the PCR told him he had COVID. You know, well, I don't know what he had, but that's what the results said. And this was read out at the inquest. And Aisling Gannon came up, and even a couple of the doctors said they weren't sure that he actually drowned. So that was pointed somewhere else. But she came out and said he drowned and linked it to COVID, linked to COVID infection.
And we just remind everybody.
This went in as a COVID death in the records.
So it did, yeah. So let's just remind everybody who Aisling Gannon is. So she was on with Ray D'Arcy before the so-called pandemic, and she was talking about, I think it was her daughter who she said wanted to change her genitalia at the age of 2. So that went out into the mainstream press. So this is the person making these big decisions. And as we can see from what you were just talking about there, I don't trust her critical faculties, and I don't personally trust her decision making. I don't think the public should either, really and truly. This has gone out into the public domain, and this is very, very questionable. But who's paying attention is the question.
Well, what's further interesting about Aisling Gannon, and again, I'm working from memory here, is that in the Dublin Coroners district, there was 2 coroners, and they appointed 2 more in 2020 because there was a backlog building up at that stage, and maybe they saw what was coming. But that's when she was appointed in 2020. Now she might have been working there just before that as an assistant. I'm not sure about that, but she wasn't. She was appointed in 2020 as a coroner, as far as I know.
Well, it's telling us something. It's telling us about who has been chosen for these roles. It informs us of the type of people who have been chosen for these roles and who are coming to these conclusions. And as you say with Roy Butler, it couldn't have been more obvious that this young man had taken this injection and then had died. And still they could not come to that conclusion. So I think the Irish public needs to be aware of this. This is why we're talking about it openly. Discuss it openly and see what is going on. But the problem is, because so many people have taken their children to be injected, there's this very strong sense of denial. People don't want to talk about it. But that's not good enough. That is simply not good enough right now. I mean, we have to put on our big boy and girl pants and deal with this collectively, the vax, the on-vax. We need to forget about this language that's been foisted on us, the anti-vaxxers. I mean, it's demeaning, it's dehumanizing anyway. And, anybody still using that language is just falling for the propaganda and showing that they're not thinking straight. And, falling for something very dark as well, because it was a very, very dark agenda, tricking people essentially. I know you're not going to say this, but this is my language, tricking people into a dangerous medical trial that has coincided with all these excess deaths all over the world. So, it's massive. The story is absolutely massive. It's not something to be shunted over and said, oh, you're far right. It's like, no, this is nothing to do with far right or far left. This is to do with all of us, the whole country. We're going to have to talk about it at some point. The mainstream media aren't going to discuss it. This is, I think, is going to be the hardest thing for people to wrap their heads around. They're waiting for it to come on the 9:00 news. They're waiting for the Irish Times to report on it. It's not going to happen there. It's not going to happen in the CSO figures either, because it's going to be hidden. Everything is being done right now to cover up. You go on to X even, which is supposed to be this home of free speech. There's a massive campaign on X now to say it's COVID, because we've had a free reign for a while, and I've used the time, and I know you have, to pump out as much information as we can for people to look at it and debate it and have it open to public scrutiny as well. So people are really examining this. But now I think they gave us a bit of free reign, and then they decided, right, there's too much of a body count here. We're going to have to do something about this. The body count has become undeniable. And what have they done? It's all about the return of the mask is a big one, and let's blame SARS-CoV-2 for all of the cancers, the clots, the heart attacks, the excess deaths. That's the plan. That's what they've come up with. And we have the other bird flu thing going on in the background as well. So there's a lot going on.
Yeah, I see some. I don't be on Twitter that much anymore, but I do see what you're saying. There seems to be a coordinated effort with the masks and this long COVID thing being blamed for everything.
Yeah.
And say if it turned out 10 years down the line and they found that it was, I don't believe it, but something that happened with whatever rebranded flu was going around. Well, that's fine. But the figures we're putting out here are telling them something has happened. Now, if they can prove to me it's not to do with the vaccine, well, I would love to hear that, because a lot of my friends, a lot of my family are vaccinated. So that'd be the best thing I could hear if there was some other cause to this. But we cannot ignore stuff like this. And we cannot ignore, like they're off a small base and like big percentages, but it's real. And like you said, in the older age groups, this sort of stuff, a 4 or 5% increase in medical problems lead to death. In the younger age groups, they just lead to very poor ill health and stuff like that. And you don't see them in the mortality figures. But if you're an older person and something is getting to you that's killing young people, you're under pressure if you're not in good health beforehand.
But what kind of people would we be? I mean, it's really bad. It's not looking good for the Irish, because what kind of people? First of all, we're kind of cool about what happened in the nursing homes. Not enough people are reacting appropriately to what happened in the nursing homes in April 2020. Most people are shrugging their shoulders and going, "What are you even talking about?" They don't care, right? So this is not looking very good, because people who don't care about their elderly or their most vulnerable, they're not really good people. They're teeing something really bad up for themselves. So, the writing's kind of on the wall too. If you don't care enough about the objective truth, not the subjective truth with my truth, your truth, but if you don't care enough about what's going on here, there's going to be some kind of reckoning. And the reckoning has started already. And I just think, people need to up their game now and face into it one way or the other. Now, what do we have here? We have July 2021. What have you underlined here in your Substack?
Well, what I'm trying to emphasize here is this age group was the vaccine rollout happened for them in July 2021. And then what I linked up above was with Varadkar, is in November he decided, and Neffet and Tony Houlihan and all the other fellas decided that they would extend the booster campaign, which was within 3 or 4 months of receiving what is basically an experimental gene therapy. Young people got possibly 2 doses in June and July 2021, and 4 months later they're getting a booster dose. I mean, this is insane.
It's reckless.
It's reckless at best, reckless endangerment. But there were, and I know a lot of people didn't go. A lot of young people didn't go and get the boosters. But it doesn't matter. A lot of them did, and that's what I'm trying to point out there. Within 3 months, people were given something that hadn't been probably tested, and are we seeing the repercussions of it 2 or 3 years down the line? Because the figures are 2 years old. But we saw the effect. There was a jump straight away in 2021, and I mean, I've done the medical deaths for every age group, and I'll call out a few here. First of all, I've done it for age 15, everyone over than 15, and I'm probably going to do a Substack on this anyway, but I didn't want to put too much figures in together. But for the 15 plus age group, in 2021 there was a 7% increase in medical deaths compared to 2020. Now that's a serious figure. In 2022 it was 10%, and in 2023 it was 10% again. So they're serious figures. That's taken in all people as well. But there was one thing I noticed in the 25 to 34-year-old age group, and I want to say these figures because if I don't say them, some people say I was hiding them. In 2021, in this age group, which is just after the one age group we're talking, there was actually a fall in the medical deaths of 1%. But then we moved to in 2022, And there was a 24% increase in medical deaths in the 25 to 34 age group. And then they fall again in 2023. So there was a spike in 2022, and then it disappeared in 2023. So, there's something going on. In the 45 to 64 age group, again, you're talking about 11 or 12% every year increase.
Well, I mean, you can imagine if this was happening in the unjabbed.
Yeah.
You can imagine the furore. They'd say, these people, look what's happened to these people.
I mean, I haven't got the actual numbers, but a lot of 45 to 54-year-olds would die in a year. It's probably over 1,000. I haven't the figure in front of me. But in 2021, the amount of medical deaths in that age group, and people in that age group, I mean, I think that includes you, Aisling, and I'm just gone the far side of it. If either of us had dropped dead in the morning, I think I hope someone would be asking a question. But there was an 11% increase in medical deaths in that age group, and a 12% in the next year, and 12% in 2023. So that's a stable increase. It's just gone up in that age group. And where are they dying? 45 to 54-year-olds shouldn't be dying at that rate. And it's the same in the 55 to 64-year-old age group. It's gone up.
But what's incredible is the lack of curiosity. But what's also incredible is knowing that these actuaries and these statisticians and all these official bodies know this. But now their job is to cover it up and to make it look normal. That's a very weird place to be. So you'd have to wonder about these people and think, is it because they want their pension? Is it because they don't want to put their head above the parapet? Is it because they don't want to be associated with what they perceive to be the far right? Like, how can they actually sleep at night?
I can't answer that question. I'm free to say whatever I want. If I was in this, if this was happened 20 years ago, would I be so vocal? I'd like to think I would be, but I don't know.
I just think once you have a moral obligation to pass it on.
But a lot of people can dismiss it. They can say, well, it's not up to me to do it. It's like journalists in the mainstream media, any of them with any sort of education at all, they know at this stage. Or if they don't know, they should have gone looking for proof that it's not real.
They know.
So they know. They know, and I know they know.
Of course they know.
And I mean, we're nonsense is thrown out we'll just talk about that screenshot in a second. But I remember the out of hospital cardiac arrest register. They put out a report every year since I think it's 2018, 2019, with the amount of call outs for heart attacks, basically, stuff like that. And the figures are up 20% since 2020. Now, they will do a report, I think it's around this time of the year, and it'll be a nice, colourful report like we're looking at there. And they will talk about how many times defibrillators were used, and they will have colour stories of people's lives that were saved, and all very, feel-good stuff. But they won't tell you that the amount of call-outs got up 20%, and ask why. And it's gone up 20% every year since. And they won't ask that question. You'll get nice stories about people's lives that were saved on the side of the road, and and this is great stuff as well. But you're not being told about why they're being called out way more than they are. And the same as this screenshot we're looking here now. Just look at that now. And it's meaningless gobbledygook. They're telling you that respiratory deaths have gone up by 17.7% from 2013 to 2023. Who cares? It means nothing. You're talking about 10 years ago. What's happened never mind what's happened in 10 years ago. What's happened in the last couple of years have made nonsense of those figures because of immigration, the amount of people coming in, the amount of people leaving. That's the headline on the CSO main report for a year for 2023. And look, it's absolute bull and means nothing.
Well, I suppose if we're looking at it from their perspective, from a PR perspective, they are in cover-up mode because we know these injections are associated with these turbo cancers and deaths. So I suppose if you put it from 2013 to 2023, I know it's a 10-year period, it kind of papers over this point of 2020 really is where we're looking at from, because this is the year of the supposed pandemic. And then 2021 is when the rollout of the injection started. So I suppose when you put it over a 10-year period, it kind of smooths things out a bit. You get to acknowledge, yeah, cancers have gone up for sure, but you're not really acknowledging why they have gone up in such startling numbers.
That's the truth of it, Ashley. It's about dilution. It's about people dismissing the figures, and it's about someone will see it. I mean, every day now there's a young person coming on, and whether that's coordinated as well in the media. You know, some young person saying they got cancer, they went to get their eyes tested and whatever, they have cancer, and it seems to be normalizing the whole thing. Now, cancer deaths, I think they're, when this time next year they're going to be way up. I did analysis of the 22 figures, and I think there was in one age group in the female, it was up, cancer mortality was up about 25% in one female age group, and it's I sometimes just this is for definite. What they're doing here is they want the likes of me and you are looking at this, and we will examine it and we say, okay, that's nonsense. We realize what they're doing, but people seeing it in the newspapers or seeing this headline will say, oh, sure, cancers, yeah, they're going up the whole time. The population, there's more of a population. Sure, it's bound to happen. That explains it.
But they are succeeding in normalizing cancer. Like, you see it in the soaps, you see it, every second celebrity. And I'm looking at the real celebrities, or people who are well known, who have real cancer too in the mix. But there's also the fakers who are pretending they have it just for money. And for the agenda. So they're in the mix as well, which is really, really confusing. But it's working. It's very similar to the propaganda that was used for COVID-19, where it works. That's the horrifying thing, is you think people are going to realize that they're having their legs pulled here, but they don't. And when it's repeated and so persuasive, people start to normalize cancer, and then they have their cancer story and their cancer journey. And it ties them back into the medical system again. And of course, major profits for big pharma, because cancer is big business.
Oh, there's no doubt about that. I think there might be a certain copycat factor in that as well, and that people want to be diagnosed with something so that they can put their story out there, or they'll make it up or whatever. And especially in the celebrity scene. But there's one thing, you were touching on it there. In sport and in Ireland, it's GAA. Does there a week go by where some young fella or some fella who's recently retired, might be a club footballer or whatever, a hurler, has dropped dead, or he's this, that, or the other? It seems to me one of the most dangerous things in Ireland to be at the moment is an ex-GAA player, because it's constant. It's constant that they're now maybe that the what explains it is that so many people play GAA in Ireland. But the point of this is, and again, I'm not pointing the finger. We have to point the fingers. The GAA made a concerted effort to get their players and members to go out and get these vaccines. Now, again, I'm going to say it. I hope it turns out in years down the line that these vaccines, while they definitely weren't effective in doing anything, it turns out that they were safe. But if they don't, these people have blood on their hands.
Well, they already have blood on their hands. They already do.
Oh, there's no doubt about it. They pushed, and they got players at the time to come out. You've done this extensively. I've seen what you're putting it together. I wouldn't have been aware of it at the time because I just stayed away from the media while all this is going on. And I couldn't believe something you put out there was players I know. A couple of Kilkenny fellas were involved, and well-known players were just trooped out to say they couldn't wait to get back training because they've got their jab. And you can imagine a young 13 or 14-year-old looking up at their hero saying, well, if so-and-so says it's okay.
Oh, yeah. We'd like that referee who said he wouldn't have felt safe refereeing games unless everybody was vaccinated. Like, can you believe that went out in the mainstream media uninterrupted?
Yeah.
That is what happened, and nobody wants to talk about it. And now we're seeing the young people dying. A lot of them are suicides, but again, we have to bring in the factor suicidal ideation. Why do they want to kill themselves? This is not a good sign for any society if their young people want to do this in large numbers. It's a really, really bad sign, and something that we'd have to do something about. But I don't trust the GAA to do it properly. Not after what they did, not after the way they coerced their players and their members into taking part in this medical trial. And we also know about the GAA is that since 2007, they've been keeping records of the heart health of their members and their players. So they have they've done extensive questionnaires with their players. They've done a lot of screening. So where are the figures? They've got to have a whole lot of information there, and that they're sitting on. Where is it?
Well, that's a good point. I don't know, but you have to remember about the GAA. They've long ago stopped being an independent organisation. Once the rebuilding of Croke Park took place, they're into government money. In the last few years, the GPA, each intercounty player gets, is it 3,000 or 4,000, and that's paid for by the government, as far as I know. So there's lots of grants go from Sport Ireland, which is a government slush fund. It's to get local TDs re-elected. But that goes way down through the GA, and the GA then divvy it out to their clubs and stuff. And you have to remember, of course, that's good. Local people get it, and that's fine. But whoever pays the piper calls the tune. And go back to that referee you're talking about. I know the fellow you're talking about. There's no point in mentioning him. Yeah. But it's quite likely he was handed a script and told, will you say this? And he might have went along with it. He probably wasn't. He wasn't forced to do it, and he probably believed what he was doing. But
well, it's an abhorrent thing to do to young people. He's outdoors. He's outdoors playing, refereeing a game. His chances of getting the thing, that we were supposed to believe was in the air and that you breathe it out and somebody else breathes it in. I mean, that in and of itself is so stupid. It's so ridiculous. And the fact that that was allowed to be the pervasive thought and that everybody fell into line. There should have been uproar. I mean, where did the backbone of people go? There should have been absolute uproar when he even tried that stunt.
Yeah, well, these people have a lot to answer for. And again, we come back to the point. They went on camera, this was just propaganda, promotional thing to get people to go and get vaccines. For no other purpose. It didn't come up in a discussion about next week's hurling match and a kind of a comment thrown aside. This was a propaganda campaign to get young people to go and get a jab. Now, again, I hope there is no ill effect to these jabs. But who do these people think that they had medical knowledge that they could get in front of a camera and say, yeah, little Johnny, get him down there. I'll vouch for it. No.
Yeah. But again, it shows how bad Ireland's morals had fallen, that we were so susceptible to this propaganda. And I know we had the priest class before where people genuflected and did as they were told, but now we have the doctor class and the science, the scientist class, where it's the same old mistakes again. The same old stupid mistakes are being made where people aren't using their own brain or even using their own voice to say, I really disagree with that. And I don't think that's right. I don't think that is the correct or right thing to do. A moral issue. And again, people being sheepish, acting sheepishly around bad behavior and saying nothing. And also allowing people like us to take the flak and saying nothing. Like, it's really, really a very bad reflection on Ireland. And, it doesn't say a lot about who we're dealing with here. Unfortunately, I'd love to say otherwise. But you see, the problem is we've become so commercialized. Like, I noticed that even in TV. Everything was about, getting paid and trying to get yourself up the ladder. And, it's all about the sponsies. It's all about the money. And sure, wouldn't you do it yourself for the money? No, wouldn't do it for the money. And there's not enough people out there who just not do it, because they have a bit of a moral backbone. And I think until we see more people like that, we're just going to have more trouble, and deservedly so.
Yeah, well, a lot of these people that we're talking about here in the GA, and it happened in the other sports as well. It's just the GA is more predominant in Ireland. They didn't make. I would not give them a fool's pardon. They didn't make mistakes.
No.
They just, I'd say they lived their life by whatever's put in front of them, they accepted, because to question anything, for them to have questioned that would question the foundation of their whole existence. Because if they question that, it means their government means them ill, or is, at the very least, is reckless with their lives and their health. That's what it would have meant. And that they couldn't go there. They could not go there. I went there. You've went there.
Yeah.
A lot of people
That's it. They think daddy government loves them, and that the celebrities are only doing it because they want to help them and not because they want to line their own pockets. Until they grow up and realize the celebrities are only lining their own pockets. That's all it's about. They don't care about people's health. Because if they did, they wouldn't say, enter that medical trial. You might be all right, you might not. Or they wouldn't pretend that the flu disappeared and something with the same symptoms turned up in its place. No.
Yeah. Like in that case, those players probably weren't paid for that, or they probably got maybe they probably did get a fee, small fee. But what I think what ticks the box there for these fellas is to be kind of a minor celebrity. And look, they're asking me to do something important instead of applying their brains and say, okay, they're asking me to get someone to go down and get medical. What do I know about this? And you have to remember that the whole GA organization is bought and paid for at the moment. You have to have
like
diversity officers, inclusivity officers, and all this. You have to tick all these boxes before you apply for grants. And so they've bought into the whole woke agenda. Don't have any doubt about it. The day of the GA club being the hardy farmer down there togging out in the cold under the ditch and leathering the ball around the field, that's long gone. That is long gone. You're talking about the middle class woke experts taking over a bit in the cities anyway, whatever about in the countryside. And they will go along with whatever the Croke Park is calling the shots now. And if the government says for anyone to get these grants, you have to have an inclusivity officer, a diversity officer, and to tick all these boxes and whatever, those boxes will be ticked. Don't have any doubt about it. And again, it's money.
It's money and putting young people's lives in danger for that money and not caring, not giving a hoot whether they live or die, and sitting on information that we need to see. Sitting on the heart information. We know they've done all that research. We know they've done the questionnaires. So where is it? Where are the results? Why aren't we allowed to go through it? So anyway, there's a lot. So I think we leave it there, Patrick, because we've covered a lot of ground this evening. And I think we just need to extend the invitation to everybody to keep an eye on what is happening with the mortality figures in Ireland. Because we know the Irish Times bought RIP.ie and they slapped those charges on. Have you noticed any changes then because you've been over the RIP.ie figures, how are they going?
They're still, the rate for the year, I think, is about 12% excess deaths compared to 2015 to 2019 average. And that's still high, but say last year, before the charge came in, I think the final figure excess deaths was just under 18%. So it's rising. There definitely was a fall off in January and February. They were way down on January, February last year. But the thing is, we don't know if it's because of less people dying or people not deciding not to pay the fee. We'll find out down the line because the CSO do background checks on this. When a death is registered, they will try to tie it up to RIP.ie. But death registration is way behind in this country. You have plenty of time to register a death, and they can't force it anyway. You know, you might be forced yourself because you want to get a will sorted out and all this sort of thing. But
I thought another CSO headline figure was a bit dodgy, which was that 666.
No, they compared quarter one in 2025 to quarter one in 2024.
That's it.
I think.
Yeah. And then they give us 666. Now, I know you to take no notice of these, but I do take notice of these numbers. I saw the 33 in the last one. I'm now seeing 666. This to me is all the satanics involved in something really, really dodgy. But anyway, okay, I may be going too far. But how do you not see these things?
Yeah, I know what you're... First of all, I do watch out for these figures. I see them in places. In that case, what they would have had to come up with is they would have known the figure from last year and decided we're going to release a figure 666 higher for the quarter. You know, if they did that, you know, you might have some smart arse in the CSO. It might have been near the figure, maybe changed it. I don't know.
Or else it's just or else it's just a dodgy figure that turned up, at one of these mysterious things that happens.
Well,
But I just
sometimes
thought
that can
that's a
happen too. Yeah.
strange one. Yeah.
I think the least of our worries is a Satan worshipper in the CSO office. That's
No, I
you know
wouldn't say it's that, but what I would say, because there's fingerprints all over this, all over the world, is clues and hints of secret
yeah.
shenanigans going on, networks of people who nudge, nudge, wink, wink. I mean, we can see that this is what has driven the COVID scam in the first place. So it's not beyond the realms when we look at these things. Now, just to wrap up, where can people find you, Patrick, and if they want to go and study what you are putting out on Substack and beyond?
Well, everything I do, as I put it on Substack, I release it there. If you Google Patrick E Walsh Substack, it'll probably come up. My site is actually called Letters from Desolation Row. So you'll find it there, and you don't have to pay anything. You can all the old articles are there. It's like a website. If you sign up, if you subscribe, you'll get the articles I do to your email, or if you're on the Substack app, it'll come to your app, one or the other.
And one thing you've been doing as a kind of a form of relief from all this heavy duty stuff, because it is very, very heavy, is a bit of singing, a bit of songwriting. And I think we need that creativity as well, and a bit of humor too.
Well, you have to. We all have to live, actually, and we have to keep going. And
yeah,
that's one thing. When you poke a bit of humor at these people, that's the worst thing you can do to them. These people don't have a sense of humor. They're the people that know what they're doing, the psychopathic ones, they have no sense of humor whatsoever when it's pointed at them. They can laugh at other people, all right, but when the mirror is held up to them, that's a different thing altogether.
And Patrick, how long do you think we're going to be allowed, let's say, to do this? Because we've got a bit of X now at the minute, but I can see X changing dramatically. There's over in Telegram, but that is an echo chamber. I mean, I'm just wondering, is it going to get to the stage where we're finished online?
You know more about that than me, but I have to say, I went on Twitter a couple of years ago, and I used to get a lot of views for stuff I was doing. Now, it could be what I was doing, or the fact that Twitter saw Substack as a threat, and anything linked to Substack really doesn't get any traction. And so that could be some of the problem. I know anything I put up, no matter what I put up, and I wouldn't have an awful lot of followers, but people would put my stuff out there, and it just doesn't get any traction. I found it disheartening at first, but it doesn't bother me, at this stage. I put it out in Substack, and people can take it or leave it. What I'm doing, and with other people involved, we're bearing witness at the moment. I don't think I'm going to change anything anymore, but that doesn't mean this hasn't to be done. The same as what you're doing. We have to bear witness, and because if no one bears witness, then isn't every man innocent?
Yeah.
If there's no witnesses.
And, if they say, well, they're just, it's just a small increase. It's like, well, every life matters. And as a society, we have to care, because when life becomes cheap, that's when we're in a really, really dangerous position. So if we can get into a better position again, where life is sacred again in Ireland, I think we're going to care more about, it's not just going to be a number, it's going to be a person, and a person of deep, deep value that we need to investigate why this happened and care about why it happened. And you're helping us do that. So thank you so much for all you do. And no doubt I'll be back on to you again very shortly, and we'll have another chat about what's happening next. But I like what you did there. We just focused on one area. And I think we're all a little bit more educated as a result. Thanks a million,
Okay.
Patrick.
Thanks, Ashley.